Hello, I'm Sarah Tremlett, and here with Ian Gibbins and Mary McDonald. We're very pleased to be part of REELpoetry 2023 to discuss our films in relation to the important topic of climate change and subjectivity. And we hope you enjoy our discussion. Thank you.
Perhaps most of you already know. Surely most of you must remember. This is how it was before the rise. This is how it used to be during the decades of drought, during the dreadful years of withering, grinding drift, sandblasting us, entombing us, the desert on our doorstep. Until, of course, the incoming, the overflow, sea levels rising relentlessly, just like the predictions, the ocean spilling over us, just like the old forewarnings. Yet this, no, we never imagined this. Such restless energy, exposing, laying bare our utter vulnerability. We were pummeled, we were pounded. Would we ever be able to withstand such a torrent of dislocation? Would we ever be able to cross such an undertow of uncertainty and doubt? Our future lay within the tides. Whatever might happen next, there could be no turning back. No more neap, no more ebb. So much for our urban paradise, so much for our precious gardens, our private havens. Nothing more than cruel ghosts of our past, taunting us through our nightmares, haunting us through our ruin. With neither runways nor liftoffs, we were grounded. We were stranded. We were abandoned on islands of isolation. As we struggled with a new order, riding anchor, all sheets to the wind, keeping our bearings, guarding our lifelines, the contraband of desire, our rations of resilience and hope, our dwindling allotment of optimism. And so we craved respite, coveted long-lost calm, a safe passage to the prosperity we'd worked so hard to achieve. After all, there were still profits to be made, fabulous opportunities. Why not treat yourself? Step up in the world, gain a rare acquisition, the home of your dreams. Well, what else could we do? We built faithful replicas. We erected historic reconstructions. We maintained an illusion of normality and savoured golden memories of our glory days. As the flood tide deepened, at least the seabirds thrived, flourished in newfound sanctuaries, expanded their territorial claims, nested, rested, or simply took to the wind. Nevertheless, some of us have adapted. Some of us have got on with life. Some of us have even found ways to forget. But the rains continue to fail, and the salt, everywhere the salt, insidious, scouring salt. And now, we've run out of options. We've run out of answers. We are tired. We are battling for breath. We are seeking any escape, any form of deliverance from here, from our hell in high water.
Flood Tide for me was a really unusual and interesting project. What would this city look like underwater? Nearly all of the scenes are artificially composited. There's almost no natural images in the whole thing. And so it was a major effort, because one of the things I had to do was to match the lighting, match the direction of the light, match the intensity of the light, match the direction of the wind, match the direction of the sun. So conceptually, the idea was to create something which looks realistic, as realistic as possible.
Who is this person narrating? You feel as if you're all walking a little bit hypnotized or like zombies.
From the point of view of narrative, I mean, I strongly believe it's impossible to have objective narrative. Narrative is always first person. There can't be anything else, because it's even if I write he did that and she did that, that's my reading of what he and she and they all did. And I choose what they're going to do. I choose what they're going to say, what happens next if it's a conventional narrative. All my poetry is fictions, which is also coming out of the neurosciences. You make stuff up and you fill in the gaps. And if you tell the same story again on another day, it's probably going to be different unless you've learned it off like an actor. How to get people to engage with that? Well, you do a fake. It's a trick. And you pretend it's you. You pretend the narrator. is a real person telling the story. And that's the oldest trick in the book. I mean, people have been doing that for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, going back to Homer. So the we, something like flood tide, it's a really important question. Who's the we? And who is this person telling the story? They're the residents of this city. And so the film is set up as sort of reportage in a way. At the time, the people telling the story, everybody knows this story. So it's news to us, the viewers, the people out there looking in. They're hearing the story about you nominally for the first time. But the narrator assumes that the viewer knows all about the incoming. They just assume, of course, everybody went out and made money out of it and started selling properties along these new coastlines and started building flats along the new rivers and new coast. Of course we did, everybody knows that.
I am still watching ghosts. Testamentary farewells sunk amid sandstone bollards, gridlock, corroded moss, black mould, pale concrete fatigue. We should not be here on this cliff top, feet a quake, unsteady with rising damp, eyes rimed with salt, flung from shoulders of mariners' wives. Homesick, addled, stricken by virus, we push for oxygen through iron-webbed duplicity, dodge the fierce splayed gib of gunpowder. Below jackhammer, bulldozer, pile driver, listen to us scratch, our scour and scrape in our patient, almost there, under earth of tactical withdrawal. This was never our natural state. We can only wait for ocean's ebb to countermand, to birth again our true inheritance.
The phrase "we should not be here" was used in a way as a chorus with the other voices.
Making the video, I realised that it had this sort of refrain, we should not be here, we should not be here. And each time, it actually looks worse and worse. I mean, the situation's getting worse each time round, and it's more obvious, you know, there's more fires and explosions and lightning and desert and plumes of smoke coming over the horizon. So Sydney's a dramatic place for all sorts. It's dramatic geographically. There's incredible cliffs and the harbour. It's dramatic culturally, both from the First Nations people who've always been there. It's the first site of European colonisation, effective colonisation of Australia, where Australia was effectively claimed for the British. Going around Sydney, nature's breaking through all over the place. You know, there's moss growing under the bridges, and there's bats live in the trees near the Opera House, and there's, you know, sharks live underneath the Sydney Harbour Bridge. But the real story is the colonialism and the destruction of country, both literally and metaphorically, and the physical country and then the social country of the First Nations people.
Your films really deal with what I think are generally called catastrophe poems.
The images still subtly convey that catastrophe, but not in such a way that they smack you in the face and make you want to just turn away.
Wishing well. I'm a river widened by misery, and the potency of my language is more than human. Therese Melot, Heartberries. Something about truth, about not needing belief or creed to open up to all that is out there. Blue sky is enough to take me, a river, the thought so wide, it expands its own boundaries, beyond, so utterly beyond. Aspiration in action. To become that whole, that full, is all I desire. À mon seul désir. The thing about women from the river is that our currents are endless. We sometimes outrun ourselves. Therese Melot, Heartberries.
Pen Kemp is really fun to collaborate with because she has her work and she passes it over and says, you bring your art to it. I work in layers, both of sound and visual and text, and it's all a choreography of everything. Something very serendipitously happening. I think when I'm creating, I'm in a very immersive state, but I'm also trying to create an immersive state. I happen to take this composition that I had created separately from the video. I'd already created a lot of the video, and I put them together, and miraculously they matched. So my interpretation of Wishing Well was, her keywords of wishing well, so the water, and also she references water through women of the rivers and women of the waters, and there's water all the way through. So it was very important to get that open up to all that is out there. So it's a moments of beauty that surround us every day that we don't necessarily notice, but if we could, they would enrich our lives so fully. It's that idea of bringing to light all those things that we could and should love that happen around us every second of every day, and little things like a water in a cup of a leaf that's on the ground, and the reflection of light on it, all those tiny little things. And so that was what was important. And this sort of meditative, immersive state of just being fully aware in that moment, in those moments of the video. Exactly, it takes up the time that it takes up. That is the experience, that is the time, and just to actually be immersed in that in sort of a floating sort of way.
The circular format, the way I read that a lot of the time is as though I was down the bottom of a well, looking up to the sky.
How did you make the as if you're looking onto an orb?
There was an app and that actually takes regular photos and turns it, like you can play with it and change it so it turns into the circles.
The way that the still photographs seem to come out from nowhere and towards you and back again. How did you do that?
So each of these, you think of it almost like a composition with layers. So each one of them is actually its own video. So there was the water video, there was the underlying video, and then all of those little moments of beauty, as I call them, are actually their own video string as well.
You choose which bits are going to be drawn. Is there any conscious decision in that?
Those are all sort of the resource creation part, and it's play, and they're all apps. They're all different apps that you can use. Some of them are kind of chintzy sort of apps, but they're fun when you use them in an artistic sort of way. But there is that element of just being fully immersed, like an artist, like painting. You're not really, or even like writing, you're not calculating theme, you're not calculating blah, blah, but you are in a different level.
Once a teeming green cosmos, 130 million of you. Southern yellow pine, Pacific silver fir, lodgepole pine, jack pine, western red cedar, Douglas fir. Forest plunder dismembered into bald gray spines soaked with creosote. Studding highways, roadsides, alleys. Column after rootless column aligned in a motionless mule train crisscrossing the continent along infinite grids. Telegraph, telephone, smart meter backhaul, video service, internet, cable TV, transformers, fiber optics, equipment enclosures, disconnect switches, electric meters, streetlights. While you root the human, current, pulse, signal, now sing in your cross arms. Only woodpeckers remember, drill you back into tree.
Utility Poles, it was very much a collaboration where Fiona was co-director and had a real vision before we'd even begun of what she wanted for her poetry film. And we met and she discussed, she calls it the treatment, as she calls it, that she has almost like a storyboard of visuals that she was interested in, sounds as well, pacing and rhythm. And so it was very much a discussion. I would create or suggest, and then based on what she had said that she wanted, and then I would send that to Fiona and she'd approve or not approve, and we'd iterate back and forth all the way through the film, which made it a very interesting and exciting process as well. For me, the poem rotated completely around this very opening image of teeming green, and the contrast between that teeming lush green of natural trees, and then taken away from that setting, and those same pieces of wood were then become dead but alive with our communication network, taken out of their own communication network that trees have naturally and in our environment amongst all of the different elements of the habitat, and then now just changed, superimposed in a way on the same landscape, the same wood, but now becoming part of a different network. And yet still things like woodpeckers, you know, as Fiona says, remember and drill you back into trees, treat you like trees, so it just is a really nice full circle. I had that opportunity to meet with Fiona and to go to some of the old growth forests over in BC, which are very different than here. Massive trees. We have big trees, but I couldn't even, I was just stunned and awed by the size of those trees. And I was while I was there, I was able to go to Vancouver Island and go to Cathedral Grove. And so a lot of the footage, especially that main central tree image that almost looks in the natural, like the actual just raw shot, looks like it's like lit, which is what inspired me. That's from Cathedral Grove on Vancouver Island, a very powerful place. So place and land and nature, and then all mixed together versus the change to utility poles.
As a collaboration, Fiona, I mean, her words gave you such a wonderful opportunity to start off with this duality anyway, between the woods, the communication networks of the trees, and then the human. Gives you a lovely dynamic opportunity, doesn't it? That you've really, I think she couldn't have found a better person to do it with, because you took as you said, you took the natural web-like forms and developed that through painting, as you do painting apps, and then to make this progressive screen with the poles marching around the screen, and then you have the Morse code that echoes this, the way that man has imposed a chronological order on things, in serial way of working. It just very subtly, though, you feel, yes, there's this encroachment. It's progressive, as you said. You made a progressive dynamic, which some people, you don't see that often necessarily in a poetry film.
That recording is from just an urban forest setting, so that you get the mix of sound of trees and leaves and wind, but you also hear the airplanes, and you hear the birds, and you hear the traffic. I wanted this immersive state to accompany the rhythm, because it's that natural as we've now got it in an urban, because you can't go backwards in time, but that natural sound that's just all around us. My poetry films are the same approach, that they have to provide that hope for me, and still tell the story, but tell the story in such a way that there is hope, there is action, there is space for reconciliation, there's space with both amongst peoples and amongst people in the land. It's an invitation to enact. So in that way, it is political. There are invitations to act, to make things better.
Okay, so my film, I Cannot Be Human, is really kind of exploring a personal and subjective point of view of how, well, in general, how people respond to animals and the importance of animals and birds in our daily lives, really. Initially, I made it without the poem for Charles Olson's exhibition film that he made. And he asked me to make something. And my daughter Hattie, who is an artist, had done a painting of me and with my rabbit, Duchess. Unfortunately, when Duchess died in April of this year, you know, she was my constant companion. You know, I had to make a film about her, but also about the environment. It was so personal, so raw, really. And I feel so angry about the government and the way things are happening with the environment. What I ended up doing with that film was that it had a sort of sacred nature to it, but I didn't want to be mother earthly about it. But I wanted to sort of convey a straight image of how my day is with the birds outside, the rabbit, and how that really, it might sound very simple, but that means everything to me. I am autistic as well, and I have a particularly strong connection to animals.
In our position on Earth as humans, we are and could be and should be caretakers and caregivers of the earth and stewarding better. And I think all of our poems speak to that very clearly about the responsibility of stewardship and how we are or aren't taking that up, and an invitation to a call for action. So I think yours really conveyed that eco grief. We are grieving. You're taking that moment and inviting us to enter that moment of grief with you.
The general question I have, which applies to your other films as well, is the poet and filmmaker as participant, as actor, as
Yes.
the subject of the film as well as the maker.
A long time ago, when I was at art school, I used to make fashion photographs, create them and model in them, as well as writing scripts for film and stage. So I've been both sides of the camera. And then my daughter, she sort of has done a similar path in that she went into doing designing. She went into fashion, but then she was more into performance, and she's doing a lot of makeup. And I was thinking about age as well, because I'm conscious I'm older. And then I thought, you know, this is another one of those minority groups really I'm in. But the words just came out after I'd made the rest of the film, which was had to be, you know, grab the viewer by the scruff of the neck and sort of say, this is what's happening. This is what's happening to me. When I have text, it looks very sort of scrappy, sort of punk. I didn't want it to be too controlled or contrived or designed. I wanted it to be as rabbity as possible.
To me, it was like a portrait.
That central panel, if you like, is about remembering. She was so much part of the family, and because she was partly wild in her way, in this very urban situation, it was always lovely, whatever she was doing, you know.
It carries the viewer through that state of anger with the eco grief, and then sort of that coming to rest and processing through it, and now able to move forward again.
Okay, so Villanelle for Elizabeth, Not Ophelia, is centered on the story of Ophelia and her relationship with the men in her life, and patriarchal situation where she commits suicide through drowning, and then the painting, the Pre-Raphaelite painting, and the model and artist and poet Elizabeth Siddal, who sat for the painting, was left to sit in the cold water, the bath she was in, so nearly got pneumonia from that, and also her terrible relationship with Rossetti, her husband, who he of course was completely unfaithful to her. And I wanted to do something about that for some time, and then this film was just slowly developed. The visuals were shot partly on holiday, which was fortunate because the swimming pool that happened to be there had a diving board, a small one, low one, so that you could get right over people when they were in the water. So when Georgie rises out of the water, before that it's quite calm. The visuals are quite calm and still with the water, and I think that I hope that the film develops in tension through the visuals as you see more and more of Georgie, and it gets more frenetic. I hope it brings over sort of a psychological, the strength that someone needs to not drown themselves, to sort of rise up out of the water, to not take the domestic abuse, which is really which I link this into. I do think there's something to be discussed about this. You know, you're talking about politics and art, and poetry film can look at these amazing, the way that we've behaved in our society for so long. You can just start unpicking that with poetry film.
How do you read the significance of the bright red lipstick?
You see, Hattie contributes. All they did was to make these lips with the red hair. And for me, it's like a parody. It's funny though, they're like a parody, but they're also a freedom, which is what I think I hope the outtakes are. It's like the outtakes are like, oh God, this is how we really are.
So it's taking that subject matter, making a person as a subject matter, but at the same time, it's sort of this active resistance. And I sort of saw the red lips as this flag of resistance as well. Yeah. So it's one and the same time. It's both a giving into that expectation to be a certain way and to be not see the person, but see the stereotype, what we've done to that subject, versus at the same time owning it, taking it back.
I think it's important to connect with the viewer. And like you said, Mary, to sort of share this story, and as you want to do, you want to share where you are in your head and get that out, don't you? And not be conceptual about it. It only helps. It's really edifying.